Picture this. You're sitting in a coffee shop, maybe New York, maybe London, and you glance over at the next table and notice someone with striking blue eyes. You don't really think twice about it. Blue eyes, looks European, makes sense. Nothing out of the ordinary. But what if I told you that person, whether they're Norwegian, German, or Russian, shares the exact same ancestor as every other blue-eyed person on the entire planet? Not the vague, everyone came out of Africa kind of common ancestor. I mean one specific person. A single individual who lived somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago. And before that person was born, nobody on Earth had blue eyes. Not a single soul. That's what we're getting into today. Quick heads up, we pulled this together from a bunch of different sources, so if you spot something off or want to add anything, drop it in the comments. What even is eye color? To understand how this happened, let's quickly go over how eye color actually works. Your eye color comes from a pigment called melanin, the same stuff that decides whether your skin is light or dark, and whether your hair is brown or black. In the eye, melanin sits in a layer called the iris. Lots of melanin, you get brown eyes, sometimes almost black. Less melanin, green. Almost none, blue. Now, eye color is actually influenced by at least 16 different genes. Scientists have mapped it out. But one key pair does most of the heavy lifting, and that's the pair this whole story revolves around. Here's the wild part though. Blue eyes don't actually contain any blue pigment. None. Zero. The iris of a blue-eyed person is basically transparent. There's no color there at all. The blue you see is just an optical illusion, caused by light scattering through clear tissue. The exact same reason the sky looks blue. So blue eyes aren't about adding something. Blue eyes are what you get when there's nothing there. So what's the mutation? Back in 2008, a research team led by Professor Hans Eyberg at the University of Copenhagen published a study in the journal Human Genetics that turned out to be pretty jaw-dropping. They analyzed the DNA of hundreds of blue-eyed people from all over the map, Jordan, Turkey, Denmark, Spain, and found that every single one of them carried the exact same mutation at the exact same spot in their genome. That mutation sits on a gene called HERC2, which acts like a switch controlling a nearby gene called OCA2, one of the main genes responsible for producing melanin in the eyes. Normally, that switch is on. Melanin gets made. Brown eyes. This mutation does one simple thing. It dials the switch way down, almost all the way off. The iris becomes nearly transparent, and we see blue. So the blue eye mutation isn't adding blue, it's turning brown off. And that switch only got flipped once. This is the bit that surprises most people. When the researchers compared that mutation across blue-eyed people from different continents, they realized it wasn't a bunch of separate mutations happening independently in different places. It wasn't one in Scandinavia and another in the Middle East that just happened to produce the same result. It was one single mutation. One time, in one person. And from that one person, it spread to every blue-eyed human alive today. How do we know? Because the mutation sits at a very specific point in the genome, and right around that point, every blue-eyed person on Earth carries an identical block of DNA. In genetics, that's called a haplotype, basically a stretch of DNA that travels together through generations, like a fingerprint left behind by a common ancestor. If the mutation had happened multiple times independently, those surrounding DNA segments would look different in different people, but they don't. They're exactly the same. Who was this person? Where did they live? We don't know their name, of course. But we can narrow a few things down. Using the rate at which mutations accumulate in DNA over time, what scientists call the molecular clock, the 2008 team estimated this person lived somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago. That puts them right around the time humans were just starting to settle down and figure out farming. Long before writing, long before cities. As for location, scientists haven't made an official call. What we do know is that blue eyes are most common today around the Baltic Sea and Scandinavia, Estonia, Finland, Denmark. A lot of researchers think the mutation probably originated somewhere in northern or northeastern Europe. But that's still an educated guess, not a confirmed conclusion. Why did it spread? This is actually the more interesting question, and honestly, the one science still hasn't fully answered. In evolutionary terms, a random mutation usually needs some kind of advantage to spread widely, or at least not be a disadvantage. So, what's the upside of blue eyes? The honest answer is, we're not entirely sure yet. Some researchers think lighter-colored eyes might help with vision in low-light conditions at high latitudes, places with long winters and weak sunlight. Others have explored possible links to vitamin D absorption. And then there's the idea of sexual selection, that in a community where everyone has brown eyes, a child born with blue eyes would have looked strikingly different, maybe giving them an edge in finding a mate and passing their genes on. But none of these have been proven. It's entirely possible the mutation simply spread by chance. The person who carried it happened to have lots of kids, their descendants moved around a lot, and over thousands of years, it just kept going. In genetics, that's called genetic drift. Sometimes things spread for no special reason at all. So why does any of this matter? It's not really about the eyes. It's about what this story shows us, very clearly, about how change actually works. On some ordinary morning, roughly 8,000 years ago, a child was born somewhere on the Eurasian continent. Nobody in that community had any idea what had just shifted inside that baby's DNA. Nobody looked at those blue eyes and thought, this is going to spread to hundreds of millions of people. And yet today, somewhere between a few hundred million and over a billion people, depending on how you count, are walking around carrying the legacy of that one morning. Every blue-eyed person on Earth, whether they're in Oslo or Buenos Aires, whether they're on a magazine cover or sitting across from you at a coffee shop, they're all carrying the same little stretch of DNA from someone whose name we'll never know, whose face we'll never see, whose life we know almost nothing about. All we know is that one day, something in that person's genome decided to flip a tiny little switch. And that switch has never been turned back on. That's everything we found on the story of blue eyes. If you spotted something we got wrong, or want to add anything, let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this, subscribe so you don't miss the next one.